Hey, supervisor. My name is Kelly Rathman. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with a private practice, and I also provide clinical supervision to associates who are working towards their hours for licensure. And I haven't been here in a bit, it's been busy. I like to hop on here and do a video, particularly when there's a topic that's kind of lit me up for that week or that day, or when there's just thematic things happening, and it gives me some ideas about how to talk about it in the context of supervision. And so what I wanted to talk about today is the nuance of saying what needs to be said. And this has come up for me as a supervisor, saying what needs to be said, saying something, having some difficult conversations with supervisees, and my own kind of growing edge around that, where maybe in the past I would have not said something, or I would have let something slide, or not known how to say something, or it feels uncomfortable to say something. Maybe that's around giving feedback to a supervisee, or noticing that there's something happening in the dynamic between us. And as a psychodynamic therapist and supervisor, that's what I'm tracking all the time. It's like, what's happening between us right now? And it can be hard to name that, particularly if you don't know if the other person is also feeling that, or if it's going to be feedback that's going to be hard for them to hear. So I am talking about this in the context of supervision, but also in working with my supervisees who are working with clients. And so, anyway, what I was thinking about today, I was thinking about one of my supervisees who's actually a trainee. So they're still in their graduate programs. They're really new. This is really their first experience of sitting with clients, sitting in sessions, and practicing understanding people and being in relationship with people in this therapeutic way. And this trainee they're really delightful to work with. They're quite young, they're in their 20s. They're really excited about learning how to be a therapist. It's so exciting. I remember I was in my mid 20s when I was in grad school, and when I, was in my first internship, and they gave me a client, and I thought, I cannot believe I'm being trusted with a client right now. Like, I remember that first session, and I'm sure a lot of you out there also remember your very first session and how kind of exciting it is, but it's also unnerving, and the stakes feel really high because you don't want to mess it up, you don't want to cause harm. So anyway, it's really fun to work with this trainee, and they're really practicing understanding what's going on with their clients. So there's a lot of case conceptualization and looking at what's deeper, what's underneath the content of, what your client is talking about is one track. And then there's this other track, which is like what's happening for them emotionally, or what's the drive, underneath that story they're telling you. What are they trying to get you to understand that they might not even know they're trying to get you to understand it, but they are. And then underneath that, the unconscious as well. And underneath that, the dynamic between the two of us. So there's so many tracks to pay attention to. And I think when you're really new, the most exciting thing is learning about your clients, hearing their stories, and then trying to make sense of it through the kind of theoretical framework that you've been taught, right? So there's a lot of excitement to understand, oh, I get it. This thing that's happening in my client's relationship, it's because of this thing from their childhood, right? It can be really exciting, like there's pieces kind of clicking into place. And so my trainee was talking about how she's now noticing that she may have this awareness, and that she has it's not an impulse, but she feels the pull to name it, to name the thing she's seeing, and that's how she's understanding how to be a therapist. Isn't that what I'm supposed to be doing? I see something that maybe the client doesn't see, and I'm going to name it, and then we can process it and talk about it. And what she's found is that with some clients, that's totally fine, and that's great, and it's really therapeutic, and it's useful. And with others, there's something else that happens, which maybe it's the client pushes back, or maybe the client deflects, or maybe the client actually turns it on her and asks her some personal question. And so we've gotten into this conversation about, yes, acknowledging that you are seeing something, but also you might keep it to yourself, and having to discern that. How do you discern? I'm tuning into something, or I'm understanding something about this client that to me feels revelatory and feels like this is going to get us to some better understanding of the problem or whatever they're coming into therapy for. But that it might not be the right time for that client to hear that. They might not be there yet. You might have, it's not that you've gotten ahead of them, but it may be that you're seeing something that they're not seeing yet. And that if we just jump in with our, cool interpretation or something we're noticing, it could feel incredibly intrusive to a client. And one of my mentors said years ago that we have to see gently. So yes, we're seeing a lot. I mean, we're trained to see a lot, and it's really cool to be able to see a lot. I mean, it's pretty fascinating and amazing. That's why we love to do this job, to be therapists. But that we need to see our clients gently, because if you can imagine being on the other side of it and being a client and sitting across from your therapist and feeling like they are staring into your soul and that they understand everything about you, they understand more about you than you understand about yourself, it's not necessarily going to feel very good. And you may have some very natural defenses that come up in the face of that. And so this notion of seeing gently is something that we've been talking about, my associate and I, or my trainee and I. So then I want to go kind of forward in the timeline of development as a clinician. I was in consultation with one of my former associates who is now licensed and in her private practice. And she is talking about this idea, this like sort of the same idea of seeing gently, using discernment to understand when is it the right time to say something, and how do we say what needs to be said. And so this very kind of simple idea of seeing gently, saying what needs to be said, is actually so much more nuanced and subtle the further you kind of get into your experience of working with people. You can tune into the more subtle energies, I would say, or the more subtle dynamics, or the more subtle emotions that are deeper underneath. And that there's this, it was just fascinating to listen to her kind of talking about this, because it's like a leveling up. We were talking about this idea of leveling up, and that when you have this new awareness as a therapist, that you are seeing your clients a little differently, you're feeling yourself working a little differently, you're noticing things a little differently, that maybe there's growth that's happening. You might be in a little bit of a growth spurt. And it can feel a little bit scary sometimes, because you might think, well, am I changing the way I'm working? Have I been doing it wrong this whole time? And I would say you haven't been doing anything wrong. You're just growing and self-reflecting on the ways that you're feeling different about the work, or you're even hearing people, you're hearing your clients differently. You're listening to them from a different place. And I kind of gesture here because I think when we start out as therapists, we're listening up here. We're just really trying to track all of the information and make sure we don't, forget our clients' spouses' names or whatever. And then over time, you're listening here, which I think is more like the emotional body and the underlying kind of themes and emotions and feelings and dynamics that are underneath. And so I think that this is just growth. And I think that being uncomfortable with it is actually totally fine and probably a good sign. My cat just walked in. I have to close the door. And so anyway, that's kind of as far as I've gotten with that right now, these ideas of seeing gently and saying what needs to be said, but think about the timing. Think about the timing. Does it need to be said right now? Is it something you can hold a little bit longer? If you're having an emotion about it yourself, which in psychodynamic terminology we call countertransference, right? Your own feelings are coming up and you're maybe not so neutral, that maybe you hold that a little longer before you decide what you're going to say. And I realize I'm talking about all of this I'm kind of going between supervision and working with clients, but I think they blend together. The ways that I work with clients is often the way that I'm working with my supervisees as well. And I'm practicing my own ways of saying what needs to be said, of being thoughtful about the timing of what I'm saying. Where is my supervisee developmentally? What do they need to hear right now? And some of that can be hard to say. So I'm doing my own leveling up and growing and evolving. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it there. I'm so curious if you have any thoughts about that, if anything comes up for you, if it's relevant for you in your own practice, any conversations that anyone out there wants to have about supervision. That's what I'm looking for. I am looking for the supervision conversations. It's what excites me and where I'm doing my own growing. So anyway, everyone out there, keep doing the good work and be well. Thank you so much.